What's going on? I've got a topic for you today.
What?
Well, I'm kind of obsessed with this idea that clutter wins by default.
You are obsessed with it.
Yeah, and it's not just physical clutter; it's mental clutter. It's the expectations of others. It's life, right? And the name of this podcast is Cultivating Life with the Lyngsos, right?
Yeah.
So
What does it mean?
What does cultivating even mean? And I think that's the concept, right? Like that's the nugget. It's being intentional about every single aspect of your life. And so, we use fitness and nutrition as a vehicle to live a better life and ultimately make stronger individuals so that we can have a better world. But it's like, how does that even happen? And what it is you're intentional about your fitness. You're intentional about your intake, your food, the things that are most personal to you. And when you're intentional about those things, you begin to become aware of how you're basically taking responsibility for your own choices. So it's a big boost to your personal responsibility, and you begin to become more and more intentional about everything, about how your relationships and how you talk to people you love, how you talk to strangers. You begin to become more intentional about your career choices, right? Mm-hmm. What you do with your day-to-day life. You become more intentional about how you spend your time. Because you begin to learn that life is finite. Everything is budgeted. And so the concept of clutter wins by default is if you're not constantly rejecting bullshit, it's going to creep into your life. And bullshit could be anything. It could be the donuts that the sales rep brought into work. Why are you not, you have to constantly reject that. If you're not intentional about that, it's not that big of a deal. Just grab a donut because it's free and it's in the break room. Guess what? That's a pound a week.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Right there. You do that. You do something like that every single day. 300, 400, 500 calories every single day. Whether it's the donut or it's the 400 calorie Starbucks drink or it's a couple beers after work, whatever the case is, you do that unintentionally. You do that without thinking about it. Every single day, that's a pound a week that you're going to gain, right? And you wonder where did this thing around my midsection come from? And it came from those unintentional choices. And here's the worst part: because you didn't choose those things, right? Because you just took what was right in front of you. You didn't even enjoy them.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's the worst. That's the worst. To gain a bunch of weight, eat a bunch of food mindlessly, and then suffer the consequences without even suffering or without even getting the actual pleasure from it. And so when you begin to take charge of your nutrition, you realize there's a calorie budget here.
Right.
And this choice is worth it, and this one isn't. And that doesn't mean you can't have donuts. That doesn't mean you can't have the 400 calorie drink from Starbucks. That doesn't mean you can't have a couple beers after work. What it means is if those go in, something else has to come out. You have to find the balance. And when you're forced to find the balance, you begin to really evaluate what you really enjoy and what's really worth it to you.
Yep.
And then now that you've determined what's really worth it to you, that's intentional about living your life.
And taking responsibility.
And taking responsibility for yourself. And that is...
that's where you start to show up.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
That's it. And and so you can take that idea, you extrapolate that out all other areas of life, right? At work, if you just accept every menial task. We're business owners, so we're guilty of this more than anything.
You can use me as an example.
If we just accept every single menial task that comes our way, right? We have to do these things by default. The clutter will win by default. There are 1,000, 10,000, there's a million things any business owner could be doing on a given day.
Or
right?
tasks at home.
Tasks at home.
Oof. If you're a woman listening to this, that's all I think about.
And so you could just accept those tasks and be busy, right? Which is fine. You'll be busy. Your head will hit the pillow at night, And woo, I was busy today, and that's good. And then you can just wake up and do it again the next day. You just continue to accept all these menial tasks. And in a week, you're going to be like, wow, that week flew by. In a month, you're going to be like, oh man, it's summer already. And then Christmas hits and you go, wow, I didn't do a damn thing that moved my life forward the way I wanted it to.
Yep.
You know, I didn't do a damn thing to move my career forward, to move my business forward the way I wanted it to. I answered 10,000 emails this year, right? I answered 10,000 emails, but I didn't even start my quarterly projects that were meant to grow and scale my business.
Yep.
Or, you know, whatever the case is. And that's clutter. That's, I don't know, I don't even know what you would call that, task clutter. That's winning by default. You have to push back against it. You know what I mean? They say, a good saying I heard the other day is the plan doesn't matter. The planning is everything.
Yeah.
Right? So planning, taking time, stepping away from the fray, closing the email browser to get out a yellow legal pad and start plotting out your quarterly goals and how you're going to accomplish them, plotting out your schedule so you know that this time is protected. This time is for driving my life forward in whatever way I want without having to respond to text messages or emails or whatever the case is. You know, that is everything. And then you go execute the plan's going to fall apart, right? It's going to, like, because life happens. But that doesn't matter because you're still going to have move forward because you did the planning and you're going to be able to adjust the plan on the fly. And if you're making time to continually plan every week, month, and quarter, you're always going to move forward, right? And it's the same with food. It's the same with exercise. I don't do every set and rep that I plan out. But man, I move forward because I don't just show up to the gym with no plan whatsoever.
Right.
You know? What do you think?
I think it's good.
Yeah.
I mean, I was kind of thinking too, just because we're in the midst of COVID, what I've heard a lot of people, that the one thing it brought to them is realizing, kind of like we were saying with the clutter, is saying no is a good thing, right? Like we were all
saying no is a superpower.
Like the socializing thing where you just felt obligated to go to every birthday party and every social event and every work event. And then all of a sudden we just couldn't do those things. And people started to realize it's okay to say no, right?
Yeah.
It's okay not to stretch yourself that thin where you feel like you have no time to yourself, right? To be just with your own family unit or by yourself in general. And that was a big one, I think, for a lot of people, that it's a good thing to not do all of those social events on the weekend or weekday.
Clutter.
Social clutter.
Social clutter.
It's hard to say no, right? Like I am a yes person, right? Like I am a people pleaser, and it really gets me into trouble. And part of me understanding my life and what helps me live up to my potential now is I've got to put me first, and I have to say no to different girls' events or a lot of tasks at home. But yeah, social clutter is a big one too, in understanding what you truly want out of your time. Because time, like, yes, we all live the same 24 hours in a day, but when you get that time to yourself, like, you got to figure out how you really want to use it. I've got to stop sweeping all the time and actually go out on a walk and listen. I love listening to podcasts, right? Like, that's a happy place for me. But I would make excuses because of all of this clutter in my life that I thought had to get done. But I don't want to be remembered by that anymore, right? Like, I want to be remembered by, like, energy that I have around my boys and around you, and showing up in a different way and being a happy wife and a happy mom and a great sister and a great friend. But part of that for me came with, well, dialing in on myself, which has been my nutrition, and it's been my fitness, and it has been my mental health. And that's been part of me decluttering.
Yeah. Wow, man, that's a lot right there. But yeah,
that was a lot.
So there's some of the things you touched on with social clutter, for sure, which is the expectations of others.
Yeah.
We can talk about emotional clutter, which is either the expectations of others or what you think others' expectations are.
Right, because I have a hard time managing expectations because I think what other people's expectations are for me.
But you don't know what their expectations are, and B, it doesn't matter.
Right.
But we're, that's a weakness, I would say, for us as a couple. I think we're both people pleasers by nature.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so we both say yes a lot. And because I don't know. Like I just, when people ask me to do something, I create a story in my head about what their expectations are, and I want to meet their expectations.
Right.
Yeah, and I think fighting back against that clutter. It's, you know what I mean? Like, it's funny because you think, when I originally started saying, like, I just can't, like, again, it's sort of the whole idea that, like, everything's finite. Your time here is finite. Your energy is finite. Like, everything is finite. And when I started realizing that, I started thinking, like, man, that's creating a conflict against me and that person, and that's why I didn't want to do it, because most people in my life I genuinely like and care about, you know what I mean? And so I'm like, so that's part of the reason it was hard to say no, because I was viewing it as a conflict between me and that person. But really, when you step back and you think about it, it's a conflict between me and what I think that person wants.
Yes.
Because if I look at that person's actions and how they've treated me through the course of our relationship, it's usually clear that they want what's best for me. And if I have to say no to something because it's what's best for me and my family, like, obviously they're going to be okay with that.
Right.
So I started saying no because I stopped seeing it as a point of conflict and a point of friction between me and another individual. It was a point of friction between me and and some bullshit in my head that I made up. Yeah.
Right. And that's been the biggest thing that I've had to work on.
Mm-hmm.
And I also realized when I would stop, if I would wake up in the morning and I wasn't actually excited about the day, right?
Yeah.
If all I thought about was an obligation I had or another job I had to get done, whatever it was, that's where I started to realize, like, I had too much clutter. And I would jump right into things. I mean, you pointed it out to me recently. I stopped doing my morning journaling. Like, I love to get up and light a candle and sit in the dark, and I journal, and I have that first cup of coffee, and I have my water, and it was like my time before the boys, like during the boys, and I stopped doing it because all I felt was pressured to do everything else, right? And I would just dive into work at 5:30 in the morning, and you're like, why are you doing that? And it wasn't until I could take a step back and realize that I just felt obligated to all these things outside of myself, and the only person that was being negatively affected was me. And so I started decluttering things and being okay with not being perfect.
Well, I mean, I think you just touched on something there, and that is, no, it's not the only person that was being negatively affected with you.
Ooh, yeah, you were.
Yeah, right? And not just me selfishly, like, everybody. And so I think going...
yes, and not... like,
everybody
not
in your world.
Everyone in my world. From even the ladies that I coach, like, I wasn't showing up for them because I didn't feel good about myself. I wasn't showing up for you. I was stressed around our kids, which is not me. Like, if you know me, I'm just happy, right? Like, I honestly feel like I was put on this earth to make other people happy.
Right.
But I was just
so that's
pleasant.
That's a really, really big point, though, because a lot of people, when they think of self-care, right, they think about, or if they think about fitness and nutrition, it's like, well, that's pretty selfish and vain. Like, how do you care about going and getting jacked and staying lean when you have kids you could spend time with, when you have obligations to your family, you could go and call your grandmother, like, whatever the case is, right?
Yep.
Like, you can't be selfish like that. And it's like, go read the book The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein. Right? If you haven't read that book, it'll take you about 10 minutes because it's a children's book, and there's a very powerful lesson there about giving too much yourself. But basically, the tree gives everything of himself till he's nothing left but a stump to sit on, right? And I don't want to be, let's call me a tree. I don't want to be a stump to sit on. I want to be able to generate fruit that you can have year after year after year. And the only way I'm going to do that is water and sunshine.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You can't, you can chop me down once and that's it. Or you can take care of me and I can continue to yield fruit, right? I can continue, you can continue to harvest. And that's every single person, that's every single individual, right? And so, our time and our energy is finite here. And it's like, if you're just rushing through and never taking time to water yourself and get some sunshine, metaphorically and I guess physically speaking, well, you're a tree that's getting chopped down.
Well, back to how do we have time to work out when they say that to us, it's because that's a priority. That is a necessity.
It's a necessity.
Like, we were put on this earth to move.
Well,
right?
yeah.
Like, let's just say what it is. It's a human need. Like, we were born to move.
It's a human need. You can't sit down 10 hours a day and expect to feel mentally and emotionally well.
Yes.
And so, but, getting back to the point about being selfish, though, is you could sit here and be a martyr, right? And be like, oh, I just don't have time because I'm taking care of everybody else. But guess what? You're not taking care of everybody else. You're showing up tired and you're showing up stressed, and you're cutting your time short. You're cutting your harvest short, right?
And that's what I was doing.
I mean that's a very recent example. We've all done it. I've obviously done it in many different stages of my life. But the point is, it's not selfish, because you start to think about who loses. You think like you're giving to everybody by being this like martyr who never takes care of themselves and just running yourself
doesn't have time for themselves. Yeah.
But what you're doing is, those people who you're trying to give to are actually the ones that lose, because they get a lower quality version of you and they get less of you.
Yep.
So it's such an important paradigm shift, because it's just we the collective, everybody, we think I don't know if we derive self-worth from it or like what the case is, but it's like it somehow we got in our heads that it feels wrong to cater to our basic human needs.
I was going to say, they're basic human needs.
Human needs.
Sleep is a human need, right? Staying hydrated, eating good quality food, and taking time for yourself and your mental capacity. These are all human needs, but people think about them as self-care. And I guess you could kind of call it self-care, but no, that's just...
But kind of not really.
It's not really, right? Like,
it's changing the oil on the car. It's putting gas in the car and it's changing the oil, right? It's not putting on fancy rims in a new paint job. Right? I mean, it can be both, right? At certain times, but at the end of the day, sleep, movement, nutrition, that's fuel and that's oil for the engine that's going to keep it running smoothly and running longer, which is important. So not only, I'm not just sitting here telling you I want to live to be 100. I don't actually care how long I live. What I actually care most about is the quality of the years I have on this earth. And
the way you said it to me when we were on our walk the other day with the babies, we just want to make sure that we wake up every single day loving life. And no matter what storm we've been through, and that can be a whole different topic. We can go through the different storms that you and I have been through together. It doesn't matter. We wake up and we are so excited about life, and we are excited about it together. We're excited about it to reach other people to love life as much as we do. And it's part of us with our personal responsibility and making sure that we do take care of all these human needs and knowing for each other that that's what we want, because you and I want to show up for each other in a way that we didn't dream possible.
Absolutely. And sometimes it feels too, so we'll talk, so there's the Mortar Syndrome, right, where it feels selfish, so you don't do it. But then, we talked about this in our other podcast about the word should. We also feel like we should be doing certain things, and so taking care of yourself almost feels, if you look at it incorrectly, like you are flipping conventional wisdom on its head, right? So conventional wisdom is get a well-paying job, right? Sock away money as early and as much and as early as possible for 40 years. And then you take that money that you socked away and saved up and let accrue and multiply through compound interest, and you live off of it, and you do nothing, and you live off it until you die. Cool. I'm not really into that. And so it seems like I should just wake up and go to, I don't know, it seems cliche, but I don't go to the job I hate so that I can get the funds that I need to retire. It's what the hell is that? So it feels like you suffer for 40 years. So you have a childhood where you're, fancy free, hopefully, if you have, a good childhood, hopefully you don't have too much heavy shit going on. And then you have 40 years where you suffer and you sock away for a later date. And in most cases, especially if you're sitting at a desk for 10 hours, you're trading your health for wealth. And then you have enough wealth to retire, but you don't have enough health to enjoy it.
Right.
And I'm not with that, man. So First of all, I refuse to school. Like, it's not that I won't invest in the future. That's not the case. It's just my investment is going to look different. My investment is going to be in me. So, keeping myself physically running well, physically and emotionally running well, in waking up and being excited about your life is a big part of that.
Yeah.
And it could be excited about big parts of your life, like career. It could be being excited about small parts of your life, like having our coffee together, like whatever. So it's like having the health and the emotional, whatever, but then also investing in me as a vessel as well, like for continuing education and stuff. You know what I mean? Like through my 20s, I mean, how much did I spend on continuing education? I spent more on continuing education as a coach than I spent as a trainer than I spent on my college degree, right? Like it literally cost more. My initial training cert was like $1,000, right? Just to get the textbook and everything like that. And then I flew around the country and went to seminars that were, usually anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000 tuition plus airfare and hotel, right? I did that for years. And when I look at that chunk of money, I mean, I don't even know, 50 grand, 70 grand, I have no idea over the course of, 10 years or so. 70 grand from the age of, let's call it 30 to the age of 60, just that 70 grand alone, if I never put another dime into it with compound interest, would be a huge leap forward towards my retirement savings. Right?
Yep.
And that would be the traditional quote unquote investment that conventional wisdom would say is the investment. But instead I invested it into acquiring skills and knowledge and learning about myself and whatever. Mentorship, right? Which is the quickest way to leapfrog into success. And now it's like, so yeah, I don't have that money in the bank, but I've got a skill set and I feel confident about myself. And I spent 10 years studying shit I was super duper passionate about. Like I didn't care if it was my last dime that I spent on those courses. I was fired up to go to them. I never felt like this is a chore. I never felt like, I got to go learn like algebra in high school. Like I was fired up to learn. I sat in the front row. I took notes. I raised my hand, like the whole deal. You know what I mean?
And we invest now because we want our quality of life now to be what we want it to be, so then it can continue to get even better as we go down the road, right? Like,
it's just it's
but we live in the now, like we do, and we're not.
Yeah, it's a fine line though between saying like YOLO and YOLO, I'm not saving for retirement, and retirement is my main goal. Like,
right, obviously we're still saving.
We're somewhere in between those two things, but
if you would come to me or I come to you and I'm like, this is something I want to do, this is gonna better my life. We're going to invest in it now.
Yeah.
And
and it's just
we're not going to take
what those things are.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I guess that was kind of a long aside. And again, I would remove the word should from your vocabulary. I'm not telling you that you should take the path that I took. I'm not telling you that you should save every penny for retirement. Like, I'm not telling you the only thing you should do is figure it out for yourself and really take stock in what you want your life to be, and then go do it.
And what makes you come alive.
And what makes you come alive, and just ditch the expectations of others. Ditch, what I mean? Ditch, which, by the way, another food thing we could talk about. But do what you got to do to like. You all see a vision in your head. Every single person out there, they have a vision in their head of like who they want to be. Down the road, who they want to be at their apex in life. And, I would argue that most of the investments that you make would be best served to bring that vision to fruition, to bring that person into reality, that future self that you see who you want to be. It's a little bit different for everybody. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But investing in making that person actually happen, making that life actually happen, I would argue is the best served investment. You know what I mean? So there's plenty of ways to squander your money. There's plenty of ways to squander your time. the only way I feel like you're ever going to feel like you make traction in your life is to look at like where you want to go, who not where you want to go, who you want to be. Like look at who you want to be and then do whatever you have to do to make that a reality.
Right.
And don't put that shit on hold.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's urgency. Treat that with urgency. And everything else secondary, I would say. So, man, I forgot what we were talking about. Oh, we were talking about clutter wins by default. There we go. So we have the vision in our head
Yep.
of who we want to be, and then we get cluttered up with expectations about saving for retirement, with expectations about how much we're supposed to work, how hard we're supposed to work, which is all like arbitrary and kind of bullshit, which we're kind of finding out now with COVID, right? Like oh my God, all these people are working from home and like super productive in like half the time because they're not being wasted. They're not wasting their time with clutter. And, that's the opposite of clutter is intention. I guess we could probably just leave it there.
Yeah.
Like if you're not intentional about how you develop your life and how you take care of your health, how you take care of your nutrition, how you take care of your mental and emotional health, how you plot out your career, how you spend time with your family, if you're not intentional about every single one of those things, some form of clutter will win by default. And then it's going to push you further away from that vision of like who you actually want to be. And that is an emotionally crushing state to be in. It's just straight up despair.
Intention is your guide, and that guide then needs action, right? Yeah. So figure out what your intentions are, let it be your guide, take action on that, and keep moving forward.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's our deal. So that when we talk about cultivating life with the Lyngsos, that cultivation is the intention, and we specifically use fitness and nutrition as the vehicles, like just the starting point. It's just, it's where you begin with personal responsibilities, taking care of your physical needs, because that's going to spiral out to taking care of your mental and emotional needs.
Right. I love when you say you clean up your own
backyard.
Yeah, clean up your backyard first.
And then take care of all those needs, and it just spirals out into living more intentionally in every other, being more intentional with relationships, career, like all that good stuff. And so, if you're curious about how we do this with nutrition, the place to start is with our 12-week anti-diet course. We go through the whole deal. We teach you all about how to find a plan that works for you, the you plan, right? Susie or Bob or whoever is listening. Like we find the plan that works for you without restricting whole food groups, without, unrealistic workout plans. Like we show you how to make it happen so you can have the health and vibrancy and is that even a word? Vibrancy? I don't know. To feel vibrant, to have the health, the confidence, all that stuff in your body, to lose the weight, to lose the body fat, but then keep it off forever in a sustainable fashion, because at the end of the day, we're not trying to do a crash diet here where we're super intentional for 2 weeks and then we just let it go. Like this is a stepping stone to a lot bigger picture than that. So I would check that out, anti-diet, ANTIDIET.co. So not .com, anti-diet, no hyphen, just antidiet.co. Cool?
That's it.
All right, guys. Don't let that clutter win, because it will.